Welcome to Meet the Candidates for the Ohio City Incorporated Board. The Meet the Candidates event is an opportunity to learn more about those running to serve on the Ohio City Incorporated Board. You can see the applicants' full applications on our website, www.ohiocity.org/board. We apologize for the technical difficulties that occurred during the original event from Thursday, July 16th. We have re-recorded the individual interviews with as many of the candidates as we possibly could in order to convey their messages to you, our community. The format will be the candidates will all give an opening statement, and then we'll answer 3 questions that were provided to them in advance by the Ohio City Board. There's also one additional question that was asked by the community that the candidates will also be responding to. Please remember that the election for the Ohio City Board ends on Saturday, July 25th. All ballots must be postmarked or be dropped off at the Ohio City Incorporated office at 3308 Lorain Avenue by that time. We thank you very much for your patience and understanding. I want to personally thank Carrie Miller and Chad Biggers for their work tirelessly to record these videos, organize them, and get them up on our website so quickly. Thank you all again, and we look forward to a good election.
My name is Jeffrey Bolt. I've been in Ohio City since 2012. My wife and I moved up here from the Kent-Akron area. We rented for our first year and just fell in love with the community and decided to buy the house across the street from where we were renting. So easiest move ever for us. When I'm not in Ohio City, I work just across the bridge at Cleveland State University. I'm a professor in the School of Communication. In that role, I teach a lot of classes in team building and conflict negotiation, mediation. I'm the in-house statistician and research methodologist classes I teach. And I think a lot of the skills that I have and classes I teach really make a good transition to Ohio City Inc. I'm also very fortunate in my position to have some free time on my hands. So I want to help out the board, feel like I take so much from it. It's about time I give back a little. So in addition, I have experience down the road. I'm a weekly volunteer at the Westside Catholic Center. And, again, I see the improvements they do there. I really love what they do and want to continue to help out the Ohio City community.
Hi, my name is Brennin Brown. I am a resident here in Ohio City. I've lived here and rented here on the corner of Bridge and 29th for 2 years. I am excited about the opportunity to be a part of the Ohio City Board if elected, because I hope to just bring some perspective of someone who is a Black woman and someone who I think can represent our neighborhood in a more diverse way. I know that it's important for us to be a place where we're inclusive, and our neighborhood is very diverse, and I think I can bring just a perspective of a new face, a new opportunity to introduce new ideas that really prioritize racial equity, which is something I'm very passionate about. I think we've got a lot of resources and things in Ohio City that are amazing and exciting, and really one of the reasons why I'm so happy to live here. But I feel that we could do a better job of creating opportunity for folks who are in the neighborhood who may not have access to the things that we have to offer. I am excited just to kind of be a part of this organization, spend more time getting involved, and I think I can do that by being elected to the board. So thanks for the opportunity, and that's about it.
Hello, everyone. I'm Chris Schmitt, and I've lived in the neighborhood for 10 years, and I've served on the board of OCI for the last 8 years, including the last 4 as the president and board chair of OCI. I'm a farm kid who found my way into the city. We bought a house at 26th and Bridge 10 years ago and have lived here very happily ever since. I live with my wife and my college-age son and my 3-year-old daughter. and we're actually here for the long term. And I can say that now even with more confidence. We found a home that we loved on 44th Street, south of Lorraine, and we'll be moving there in the fall to continue to raise our family in the city and hopefully have our forever home in the neighborhood. So I'm excited to be a part of the growth of that part of the neighborhood, that west down Lorraine, like I have been in the 26th and Bridge area and Market District. And so it'll be fun to continue to see the rest of the neighborhood develop and continue to spread out. I started the trend of working from home in Ohio City before coronavirus made it to where everybody was working from home. My actual office is in DC. I work for the National Association of Manufacturers, and a big part of my job is creating job opportunities for people in cities like Cleveland and also in manufacturing. And so the big focus is how do we create opportunities to upskill people and reskill people to the jobs that exist in places like Cleveland to be able to make things. And I love working with people who make things in America. Really, I treat OCI as a second job. My first job is obviously the one that helps pay the bills, but OCI, I spend double-digit hours a week working on projects with OCI and working with Tom and the staff and with the board to be able to help the neighborhood where there's opportunity. And so my big passion is to jump in and to use my hands. I love to do the strategy. I love to do the board calls. I love to do those things, but really my focus is how do we show up at an event and get our hands dirty and volunteer and make sure that everything just goes as well as possible. I was raised in a family that really taught me that if you have anything at all, you have something to give. And so be that time or money or effort, I always feel like Ohio City is something I want to make sure to get back to. Thank you for your consideration of my candidacy, and thanks to all of the other candidates who are running for the board this year.
I'm Helen Smith, and I'm a candidate for the Ohio City Inc. board. I moved to the neighborhood in 1970. I'm gonna let you figure out that math to see how long I've been here. It's been a long time. My background is kind of varied. I did public relations and fundraising for nonprofits. And then when we moved to Ohio City, we discovered very quickly that to get things done, one had to get involved. So my family got very involved. I ended up being a member of Cleveland City Council for 18 years. After I served in City Council representing Ohio City, Clark Fulton, and the Flats West Bank, I went to Cuyahoga County and worked in the Treasurer's office running his housing rehab program. Since about 2003, I've had my own consulting firm. We do a lot of work with neighborhood organizations throughout the city, mainly working on economic development projects, helping the staffs of our local CDCs assist them in getting those projects completed. I've been on the Ohio City board and been chairing the safety committee most recently.
All right. Good morning. My name is Joel Wimbiscus, and I would appreciate being given consideration to be elected or re-elected to Ohio City's Board of Trustees. I've lived on Clinton Avenue since 2006 with my wife, Molly. We moved in while my oldest son was just 9 months old. We now have 5 kids, ages 5 through 14. And at that point, when we first moved in, I didn't imagine that we'd stay put. I didn't necessarily think about where we would end up either. But very quickly, this neighborhood became home, and it became home because of the people and how much they care and how passionate they are about the neighborhood and about all the different things that go on in the neighborhood. There's a lot of character and there's a lot of grit, and there's a lot of people who are willing to put in the effort to collectively make this a better place. Back in 2007, I joined Ohio City Near West's Board of Trustees, OCI's former name, and I've been on the board ever since. And as a board member, I've served several terms as board secretary, as vice president. I've also chaired the Real Estate and Land Use Committee for the past 6 years, and I hope to continue in that role. I very much enjoy working on the board. I find it very enriching. It is something that because of my family and because I also work in the neighborhood, my wife works in the neighborhood, we're very involved in my kids go to school in the neighborhood. just about everything we do is around the neighborhood. So it's something that I feel like is a natural extension of my home life. As I mentioned, I work at Land Studio, which is a nonprofit urban space and public art organization that's located in Ohio City. I work on one of my largest current tasks is working on the effort to turn Irishtown Bend into a beautiful public space for all people. I've also worked on the Red Line Greenway liking trails that go through the neighborhood. So I find that my job, when I'm not a board trustee, the things that I'm working on are also things that help improve the neighborhood. So I hope to continue serving on the board. I humbly ask for your vote, and thank you.
My main focus is really on engagement with the community. Here in Ohio City, I love that we have this small community feel. Yes, we have this symbiotic relationship with the businesses here. They are absolutely necessary. And, I love the fact that we can walk to these restaurants and bars and the West Side Market and grocery, and everything's here for us. However, I don't want to lose feel of the actual community. During this whole pandemic, I've been fortunate enough to have a corner house where I've gotten to know a lot more of my neighbors. Generally, I know them by their dog's name. So, your spot's to see a human, but nonetheless, I'm getting that community that I really like. So in Ohio City Inc., I want us to not lose sight of the actual connection, the engagement. I think things such as the programming that we already do are amazing. The open air market, the Ohio City Home Tour, the festival. I'd like to see more of that so that we get to know our community members and we have this connection and engagement with each other. I believe Ohio City does not want to lose the diversity that makes it such a wonderful place. And one of the issues I think that kind of goes along with this is the idea of perhaps congestion, in particular with parking. We are very fortunate that we have a lot of people visit our community, especially on the weekends. However, a big issue with that is when they come here, where do they park? We still need to work on more alternative transportation options, more walkability, safe, dedicated bike lanes. Again, these are things that are already started, but we need to kind of continue with this. When new businesses or even homes are in the renovations in the area, we need to consider the whole idea of parking and congestion. I wish we were in a time where we don't have any cars and everyone walks and we have mass transportation, but we're not there yet. So we need to consider that. So things such as slot homes that are coming in the community, we really need to consider if this is best for the overall good of everyone within the community. We need to let people know that their voice will be heard. When people communicate and don't think anyone's listening or no action is taken, they stop trying to communicate. I think my own personal example of after 7 phone calls of the city of Cleveland to replace my trash can, I ended up just duct taping the thing. So we first need to let people know that their voice will be heard and, action can take place from that. Second, we need to reach every community member. It is very important that we get the entire correct sample. So my research methodologist had on now, when we talk about volunteer sampling, where we try and get some people's ideas, we're not getting a representative sample traditionally. Think of when you go to a chain restaurant and you have a comment card there. When do you fill that out? Well, when you've had the best meal of your life or the worst meal of life. We're missing the 95% majority in between. So same thing when we're talking about developments in our community, we need to reach everyone. So whether this is old school, knocking on doors and getting people's attitudes, or more importantly, letting them know that their voice will be heard, we can then have a representative sample and understand what is best for the entire Ohio City community. This is a major concern and a major issue. I think first off, everyone needs to be open to the conversation. A lot of people find it a difficult and an awkward conversation, but ignoring it is not helping. So we first need to realize that yes, this conversation needs to happen. Second, everyone needs to be listening. I'm traditionally a positivist, quantitative researcher, but in this issue, we need to be naturalists. And the naturalist perspective to this, I don't understand what you experience without understanding your background. So although you and I can both experience the same event in our street, how you will interpret that event is going to be based upon your background, the lens that you've gone through life. And so I need to listen. I can't assume that what I see or what I perceive as reality will be the same as you. So we need to have the conversation. We need to listen and understand that everyone's going to have a different view of this. And we need to support. All right. No longer can we just ignore and say it's too difficult of an issue. How can we tackle it? It's too big. No, ignoring it is only increasing the issue. So we need to, open, listen, and take action where we can.
So if elected to the board, as I was trying to think about ways that I would like to be more involved and ways to incorporate kind of bringing in and engaging, connecting with some of the underrepresented folks, residents in our neighborhood, I was looking into the block clubs and realizing that, I didn't know much about block clubs prior to moving to the neighborhood. I've gotten a few flyers. I'm a part of the J Bridge, I think, Clinton Block Club. But honestly, I haven't even been very involved, but kind of noticing that some of our neighbors, folks who live in the Lakeview Terrace and Riverview Tower apartments don't have a block club. And so I think that things like that, like realizing that there are parts of our neighborhood that are more, may offer more opportunity to bring in and include Black and Brown neighbors. I think thinking about having a block club, working with the community engagement committee, as well as the block club associations to really support this effort, I think would be one big idea that could bring more voices, bring more inclusion, and just create a better sense of connection for different members of our neighborhood. So one of the biggest tensions that I believe a significant issue is the lack of equity, racial, socioeconomic equity in our neighborhood. I'm a renter here. I, moved into the neighborhood, and I think that my experience is unique in some ways because I'm not from the area. I don't own a home here. But I think like hearing the voices and really inviting folks who aren't traditionally represented right now into the conversation, into meetings when we talk about development, thinking about, finding ways to really hear the voices of all of our neighbors, but also including, ideas and a commitment to affordability is a huge tension for me. And so, yeah, I think that's one of the things that we could do to make change. I know in the conversation that we had earlier this week, there was, some discussion by folks on the board of making the board itself more representative of our community. I think that's a good start. But I think just overall making a commitment to hearing folks who really are on, other ends of, whether it's low income or, more diverse voices, people who are not homeowners, but renters, thinking about what we can do to work with different organizations, even banks, and talking about ideas about, home ownership, if that's something that we want to do. There's a lot of ways that we could go about just including the conversation, making it more inclusive around those issues. So I think that one thing that is big about this time that we're in, besides all of the challenges that quarantine and COVID-19 has brought to the globe, is that we all recognize how important it is to have access to virtual learning, virtual connections, even literally just being able to understand what's going on usually takes having access to the internet. And so one of my ideas and things that I think could be a really good opportunity is for the Ohio City Incorporated and folks involved could partner with different library systems, or even reaching out and finding money through grants, just creating opportunities to provide internet access to folks who don't have access. I think that's a way that we can disseminate information. That's a way that we can all stay connected. We can be more aware of which of our neighbors and folks who may be elderly or low income, school-age children who require the internet to be able to function in this day and age, in this era that we're in. Even in, with school children, them having to go into virtual learning, what does that mean as far as what the needs are for people in our neighborhood and in our community? So I think the Ohio City Incorporated Board could use and find ways to promote and engage different organizations to help with that. I think we have a huge resource of nonprofits and a network of a lot of organizations that are doing good work already in the community, but I think finding ways to have us be more connected right now around some of these issues that are more pertinent to what's going on in this era and the coronavirus and all that we're experiencing. I think we can really band together better for those in need, and just support each other as a community if we're all more connected. Wow, this is a huge question, and I think it's an important, it's an important message that we're even asking these types of questions now. Right now is a moment in time where people are more aware and becoming more open to recognizing the disparities and the structures and systems that work against folks of color, Black and Brown people. This is not something that's new to me. It's something that I have spent time working on in my own world. As a resident doctor, I work on a lot of diversity and inclusion efforts. And one of the things that I think has been most important to me was taking part in a Racial Equity Institute training here, conducted by Third Space Action Lab. I had the opportunity to learn a lot more about the history of systemic and structural racism in our country. And also one of the things I took away from that was learning that, we all are gatekeepers in the message and in creating opportunities that are anti-racist policies and practices in our own lives. And so I think one of the things that the Ohio City Incorporated Board can continue to do is to continue to amplify and carry on a conversation about how what we do as a board, or how what we do as a neighborhood really perpetuates some of the policies and some of the disparities that we see around race and ethnicity. And so I think we can begin to listen more to folks of marginalized groups. I think we can like you said, bring more representation to the board itself to amplify that conversation, to bring more folks to the table who are in minority groups, as well as just, not end this with thinking we can check off a box because we do a training or do a couple workshops. It's an ongoing effort to create and sustain more inclusion. And I think that's one way to start.
Our biggest opportunities are around our values of diversity and inclusion. If the last 3 months have shown us anything, it's how far we as an organization have to go to make sure that we're living up to that expectation. But it's also how far as a neighborhood we have to go on that topic. That starts with reframing our board to better represent the neighborhood. I'm committed to using the available appointment spots that we have to add diversity to our board. And I really think we're in a position that in the next year or two, we'll be over a third persons of color as representatives on our board. That's not exactly proportional to the neighborhood, but it's closer. And that's important for us as we look forward to how we're going to change the organization. It's how do we take steps in the right direction? And so I think that you'll certainly be able to see some change coming there soon. With the creation of this CMHA appointed board position, that also gives us a chance to better connect to Lakeview and Riverview, which are very important, vital members of our community that we've never included the way that we should have. And I will admit that as a fault. It's something we have to do better at organizationally to make sure that we are creating opportunities to engage with those communities, but also it's making those communities feel like they're part of our community, because in the end of the day, we're all part of Ohio City and we need to act like that more effectively. Our opportunity continues with programming, though. It's where we're actively working with organizers from around Cleveland, from several different organizations, on events that promote Black voices and reframe community dialogue around the topics of race and equity. And so that's something you'll see coming this fall, and I'm excited to get more involved with that and amplifying Black voices. If we're doing this right, we're not just simply having conversations about diversity and inclusion. We are reframing all of the conversations we're already having with that lens. It's not something that we talk about for 20 minutes on a board agenda. It's not something we talk about for a little bit on a block club agenda. It's something we have to focus on as just the way we do business, the way that we think about these problems in the neighborhood. It's something that affects all of us every day, and we have to take responsibility for making the change that we want to see. I'm a firm believer we have room to grow. In the 1940s, Ohio City had around 40,000 people living here. At the 2020 census, we expect that number to be just over 10,000. So the fact that we have 25% as many people shows that there's a lot of opportunity through density and through smart development to be able to add people to our neighborhood. Of course, we have to do it in a way that respects the current residents of the neighborhood and creates opportunity to add diversity to our neighborhood, and not just people coming in from the suburbs because we're a cool neighborhood to live in, whatever that means. So it's something that we need to make sure that we're doing things the smart way. To me, that means ensuring rentals and condo buildings have 10% affordability as one of their core tenants when they open up, and we've been working on that for several years, and we'll continue to work upon that to make sure that we can have people of all kinds in every development that goes up. It means that building single-family homes in the interior of the neighborhood on land bank lots that are affordable. It's creating things that teachers and nurses can afford to move into our neighborhood. Because that missing middle is something that's very important to us and something we want to focus on. How do we create opportunities for families to move in here and stay for the long term? And also that means re-examining the property tax programs in Cleveland, specifically around abatements. So it's great to have the abatement program to attract people to the neighborhood, but using the abatement to offset costs for developers or using the abatement to offset costs for building $500,000 homes doesn't really go to the need of that program. We could be better using that program to encourage people in that missing middle that I talked about, or lower income development, to make sure that we're adding diversity to our neighborhood and ensuring that we have really an economic range of people that can focus on raising their families here and being part of the community. That's ultimately the difference. We want the diversity to where we can make sure that our community is as active and vibrant as it possibly can be. This is certainly one of our biggest challenges, and I'm not too proud to say one of our biggest failures to this point. We have to become better marketers of our organization to people that live in our neighborhood. We have 75,000 people that follow us on social media, and that's great. And it's something that we should continue to promote the neighborhood to the region and to the nation. But we only have about 7,000 adults that live in the neighborhood. So we're spending a lot of our time, I would argue a disproportionate amount of our time, talking to people that don't live here. And so we need to refocus our message to make sure that we are connecting with the people who are impacted most by our decisions. In my opinion, that means we have to get out from behind the screen and get out into the neighborhood. Whitney Long-Jones on our staff is a great example of somebody who's created relationships within the CMHA properties and gone out to make sure that they're included in our conversations, but also that they make sure that they feel like they have a voice in what we're doing and the programming that we're putting on and the decisions that we're making. But we have so much more to do with the Latin American community south of Lorraine, with the Black population elsewhere in our neighborhood. We have so many opportunities to talk to the less represented voices that we have to make sure that we are going out of our way, again, to knock on doors. It's how do we have those conversations in person? And I would do a special call out for people who've lived in this neighborhood for a long time. We have a lot of families that were here from the 70s and 80s that have been along for the ride in all of the changes they've seen around the neighborhood, but we haven't found a way to engage them yet. And so we need to make sure that we are doing everything we can to do that. as president, I led a series of rotating board meetings that we had board meetings in CMHA properties and several of the nonprofits around town. And did that fix anything? No, but it hopefully opened the eyes of our board to always remember that the people we're representing come from very different walks of life, and that we have a responsibility to all of them. But most importantly, we have to define our value as an organization in a way that helps underserved communities understand what we're doing. We get positioned a lot as the people who build things, or the people that work on development, or the people that only care about the new buildings. And that's not true. If you look at the proportion of staff salaries, if you look at the proportion of staff time, development takes up a relatively small chunk of who we are. And I don't think that message gets out as frequently as it should, and as effectively as it should. And so it's our responsibility. And I think that's one thing I certainly want to focus on in the next several years, is how do we continue to market that value of who we really are and what we really do out to the community. So I think it starts organizationally. I learned from my grandparents that make sure that your own house is in order before you start looking outside. And so we have to look at what we are doing as OCI to make a difference to this challenge. First, balancing our board. I talked about it earlier. It's how do we make sure that we are better reflective of who the community is inside of our boardroom. And it's something we're working on, but it's something we have more work to do. Number two, amplifying voices in the community. It's how do we find Black and brown voices that are out there speaking, that we can provide them a platform for us to be able to amplify what they're saying, and to make sure that they're heard in our neighborhood and beyond our neighborhood. And number three, breaking some eggs. I think our organization has a tendency, as we were growing, to be more conservative on issues because of the way that we're funded. So institutional funding comes along with some political expectations, if you will, to stay quiet on bigger issues. And I think that we are at a point now, we are strong enough as an organization, we are strong enough as a neighborhood, that we're in a position to break some eggs. One example would be the Cleveland Indigenous Coalition asked us to sign on a few weeks ago to a pledge about changing the name of the Cleveland baseball team. And we did. And I suggested to the board and staff that we take it on, and they agreed as something that's important to this organization. Why? Not because baseball team names is something we particularly should care about as an organization, but because we have natives that live in our neighborhood that ask us to be a part. And so that's something that we have to take the responsibility of, is protecting, but also amplifying the voices of our neighbors. And then in the neighborhood itself, I would say it's driving third spaces. It's things like Near West Rec. It's things like our Street Fest when it comes back to life after the pandemic is over. It's how do we find places that we take people from all different walks of life and put them in the same spot doing the same thing. I think we were on to the right track, I would say, especially with the festival. My favorite hour of that event is the last hour. When there's a big party in Market Park and there's people of all different kinds that are there and dancing and singing and partying together and enjoying Great Lakes beer. And it's just a fantastic way to get everyone out focused on just being a part of something. And so we need to figure out a way to amplify that 364 days a year, and not just the one Sunday evening in the fall.
On the safety committee, we've been updating our camera system, continuing the court watch and home safety inspection program, and also coordinating with the special improvement districts, especially the newly expanded SID district over in the Detroit Avenue area. So what do we want to do upcoming? We want to plan for a safe community that's based on being prepared, informed, connected, and knowledgeable. The focus would be on building partnerships to provide training on a number of safety-related subjects, as well as developing better communication between Ohio City, 2nd District, and other safety forces that are here in our neighborhood. Schools would be another focus. In our neighborhood, our school campuses are surrounded by residents. Schools have their own emergency plans, but how do close-by neighbors interact and assist in the event of an emergency? The same issue is true for our CMHA buildings, both the high rises and the low rises, and all of the nonprofits and other institutions that serve clients daily face the same kind of issues. What do we do in a worst case scenario? So the focus of the safety committee would be on answering those questions and solving those problems and setting up those partnerships. As any community has tensions, so does Ohio City. I think economic disparity is one of those issues that face us. Ohio City Inc. can assist in this area by encouraging developers that approach Ohio City for help to hire locally and ensure that residents are informed of these opportunities. Dave's Supermarket is a good example of that. When Dave's came into Ohio City, each resident in the neighborhood received a notice of job availability at Dave's and that they wanted to interview neighborhood residents for those jobs. So pretty soon, many of us were seeing our neighbors working at Dave's. It worked, and it worked very well. It also opened up opportunities for people. I think the second thing we can do is to change the city's tax abatement policy that will encourage affordable housing rentals and ownership, plus continuing to target city and county-owned lots and foreclosures. Concentrate on those areas to keep the affordable housing available in the neighborhood. The Near West Partners venture that Ohio City and Tremont West are just in the process of forming is extremely important as well, and I think will help on that issue. But the tax abatement policy for the city has to change, and it can differentiate between and among neighborhoods, and we can have different policies for different areas of the city. Communication today is more important than ever, and it's been an issue in our neighborhood and other inner city neighborhoods for a long, long time. I think the lack of internet access for elderly, low-income, and school-aged youth is a major issue, particularly for the students who've been forced by closed schools to go the virtual route. We know that the virtual route has had some success, but for the most part has real shortcomings. For those without internet access, we've got kids sitting in library parking lots. We have kids sitting looking for hotspots in order to access the internet. This may continue into the fall and into next year. I think that we've got to work on this issue and that Ohio City can play a role in helping reduce that problem. They can help by assessing the need in our community, who needs the access, where is access needed, how can we help people get that access. And then OCI can also be a connector to the agencies that are working on this problem, and there are a number of them that are doing that. We also have the ability of having a lot of young people who grew up with computers. I can see our asking those folks to help us teach people who don't know how to use computers exactly how to do that. And I can see the young people volunteering to do such a program with us. I think there's a number of things. First of all, I think our neighborhood has a distinct advantage in that many people have moved to Ohio City because they want to live in a diverse neighborhood and rear their children in a diverse neighborhood, so that we've got probably a ready and willing and strong audience to work on this issue. The first thing I think our board could do is sign up for the Racial Equity Institute. This is a program that's been offered here in Cleveland for the past 2 to 3 years. NPI was influential in bringing it to Cleveland. A number of board members for other nonprofits have gone through the program. I went through it. I found it to be very, very beneficial. I think we've hit on some of the other issues. The income disparity obviously is a big issue. We can help there in terms of the jobs provision, making sure that the knowledge about jobs that are available is sent throughout the community. The low-income housing efforts that OCI has been working on is the second area. I think we also should look at, and this was a petition drive that started in Ohio, I think it was last year, but it was looking at the minimum wage. I think we have to look at the minimum wage. It's absolutely too low. I think the pandemic has brought this to the forefront. That's another issue that we as a board and as a neighborhood can work on. I think programming through the arts, doing programs like Cleveland Public Theater does each year with St. John's Episcopal Church, is a major educational effort in this area. The last area, I think, is safety. And we do a lot of work with the 2nd District, Cleveland Police Department, but also CMHA Police and other entities in the neighborhood that are providing security. And having an ongoing discussion with this group is extremely important, and it's extremely important for the neighbors and OCI to be a part of that. So there's a number of areas that we can work on as a board and as a neighbor.
So one big goal that I would have for Ohio City incorporated to work on during the coming years would be to find ways for people to find new and more meaningful ways for people to interact for 2 reasons. One, just as the Near West Rec League has done a great job in getting people to interact, such as parents who normally may not interact because they come from different backgrounds. And they do that because they all come and watch their kids play sports, and they find an opportunity to meet new people and cheer their kids on together, and it's a good experience. But I would like to take that a step further and find opportunities for not only for volunteering or just participating in different things that bring people together, so that we can have further integration within the neighborhood of different types of people. Also, I said for 2 reasons. One, for volunteering, because when people do things and volunteer in ways that really make an impact, it increases your bonds to the neighborhood, it increases the bonds of the people around you. And so I think we should make an effort. The outreach committee has done a really good job in finding ways to do that. I think we need to just take it a step further. So that's, and now as I think we need to track it so we can see what types of people are volunteering, what people are participating, so that we're just not hitting with the same people all the time. It'd be good to see where people are coming from and you know, what their backgrounds are. So that's my one. It's a nebulous idea, but it's, you know, it's a general effort that I think we should put our efforts into. I think the biggest issues surrounding new development in our neighborhood is the process and the tension that goes along with those developments. People are very passionate about change in this neighborhood, and I think that's a good thing that people care a lot. But we need to elevate the level of conversation that we have, because I don't think that sometimes passion sometimes can lead to unproductive conversations. But we need more affordability to be included in these projects. We need their design to be improved, and we need projects to better interact with the surroundings, with the current neighborhood fabric. Real Estate and Land Use Committee being on that committee, I've been able to see a lot of what staff has done. Staff has made an incredible effort to increase affordable units that are in some projects, increase level design, and also just increase how they interact with the surrounding neighborhood. But also things such as outside of those developments, but creating your own developments. Staff has worked to create the land bank, which is just up and getting running, and I think that's a fantastic way of getting more affordable homeowner units into the market. We've also, I think we've also done an excellent job. There's a large project at the Dexter project at Franklin Circle, including a pedestrian walkway through the center of it, so that doesn't block off one neighborhood from the next, one portion of the neighborhood from the other. But I think it's, so I'm mentioning certain strategies, but I also think that we need to have better discussions around these things so people better understand them, so that neighborhood can better advocate for. Staff can do so much, but when the neighborhood is also behind it, then that leads to greater change. So outreach has become something that is, in the time of COVID-19, outreach has become much more difficult for obvious reasons. But before COVID-19, there was still many sectors of the neighborhood that it's hard to engage. They're hard to engage for various reasons. I think that, and I totally defer to staff on this because they are the experts, but I think that increasing outreach efforts, which maybe adding staff so you can better engage with social service agencies in the neighborhood, with people like legal aid, churches, and just asking how can we better bring in people into the fold so that we can increase communication, increase opportunities where there's people of different backgrounds interacting with each other. If there was a book that gave this answer, then I would suggest we all read it. But it's because it's not something that I think anyone's really figured out how to do well. But simply put, it's increasing staff time, or the amount of staff that you can put towards doing outreach, so that we can listen to the different organizations that work with people who are not normally, who we are not able to reach. But it's simply put, it's listening, and then then acting on what people say. And so it's pretty straightforward. And sometimes we're not always the best at listening, but that would be the most important thing to do. Structural racism obviously is an issue that is very prevalent in the city of Cleveland and in Ohio City. Obviously, there's OCI on its own cannot eradicate that, but it definitely can take extra steps to help increase communication between people. There is a training called from the Racial Equity Institute that provided a couple days training and I know that many staff members of OCI, as well as other nonprofits in the city of Cleveland, have gone through it. But it does an excellent job of explaining issues around structural racism, where it comes from, where it is now. And I think it's opened a lot of people's eyes. And I think while it's expensive and it's not something that OCI could pay for everyone and anyone in the neighborhood, if we could start a series of neighborhood workshops in that's based on the Racial Equity Institute's program, that would be a wonderful way of getting people together to talk about this issue. And we should be able to, and do it in a way that embraces all aspects of the neighborhood and is not just, the same people from the same block club. It should be done in a way that, brings in people from the CMHA, from south of Lorraine, north of Lorraine. But I think that would be a good first step. And that's an important thing that we should do.